Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show about the death of small towns, classic lawmen, and family over everything. I'm your host, Shani B.
And I'm your other host, Cisco from Misfit Minded.
Each episode, we check the gate and break down movies from all genres, from major franchises to indie darlings, and we sneak into new releases every once in a while. But today, we are going back in time. We're
Yep.
talking about the 2016 semi-ethical bank robbery film, Hell or High Water. But before we get into it, it was The Boys series finale last night, and I know you're a fan, so I want to hear your takes and your reviews. I'm into it. I want to watch it. I just don't have time. So bring me
Yeah.
up to speed. Help me get me into this world.
And I promise this is gonna segue nicely because Taylor Sheridan is the king of television right now. So I feel like
He really is.
we're in clear waters to talk about TV. But yeah, I mean it ended last night and it felt like I did listen to an interview with the showrunner what's his name? I think it's Eric Kredke
Okay.
and or Eric Krepke, I'm something like that. But
It sounds like a
he
West Side Story character.
he said he's been working on this show for like 10 years, which is crazy. And I looked it up. I'm like, I don't think it's been that long. It's only been on the air for 5, I think, like since since 2019. So
Okay.
7 years, yeah. Uh,
Yeah, about 7 years, right?
and there's been 5 seasons, and like I don't know, I feel like it started off like really strong. It started off as like a satire of like what if Marvel is the king of everything when that show first started. What if superheroes existed in our actual current world?
Okay.
That's
Yeah, more
where
like Watchmen infusion, but maybe not as, dark or counter as DC vibes.
but like where like fascism and before that became like a big hot topic word, and capitalism runs everything. I feel like they really like were on the pulse of what was to come, even like in 2019, because that was but pre-COVID. It feels like so much has happened. I think that's what I was trying to say,
Yeah.
since it first started. And I just feel like in the last 2 seasons, I would say, and especially this final season, it's so hard to end a show. I think
Yeah.
it's there, especially a show with this amount of like VFX. I think that
Okay.
really like held it back a little bit because basically the villain is Superman. Like, what if Superman was like trying to be a fascist dictator who like considered all of humans as less than, and he was gonna like rule,
Yeah,
like
this is
so.
what Batman was afraid of. Right,
Yeah.
totally.
And
Mhm.
so when you have that, the stakes are, we talked about this a lot when we talk about superhero movies sometimes, that like when the stakes are world shattering, everyone involved. And this last season in particular was like people talking in rooms, pretty much every scene
Of
of like
course.
people talking in rooms, and like, people's power. Like, and I think, we talked about this with the Stranger Things finale, when the stakes are supposed to be that grand and they don't feel that way. That's
Right.
what lets the door open for the fans to go, oh, well, this person's power should go like this. Like, it just leaves open all of the
Yeah.
inconsistencies, and I feel like that's why there's such a backlash to this last season and the finale in particular, where we
Okay.
got to where I assumed we would go. I'm not going to
Yep.
spoil anything,
Okay.
but it was such a rocky ride to get there. And so when certain characters died, it didn't feel earned necessarily. And like, it felt very rushed. I know a lot of people, whenever it comes to this finale discussion, they talk about Game of Thrones.
Right.
I saw some people being like, it wasn't that bad, but I'm like, I'm thinking about it and I'm going, a lot of the same problems with the Game of Thrones finale were in this one. And I would say Game of Thrones delivered on the VFX a lot more than
Okay.
this
Okay.
boys finale. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of hard for me to say like this one was so much more successful, and at least it wasn't Game of Thrones. I'm like, it's at least
Yeah,
Game of
it's
Thrones
just
brought you dragons, burning shit down. This one,
it's true.
the final boss fight was in a room, in a White House room, and I was in the Oval Office, and I'm going, that's what we could that's what we're building towards, like
Yeah, it
that's the
wasn't even
big.
in sort of like the half-designed ballroom or anything.
Oh
Come on.
man. And they were doing so good, like, again, because they write this show, like, this season years in advance. There was a whole golden Homelander statue before
Okay.
Trump ever built one of those. This last season in particular, Homelander, the villain, is like, his plan is to be immortal and sell himself as God to the people, and whoever didn't believe that he was God, he was
Wow.
going to kill pretty much any descendant, like
That does
dissidents,
sound a little too close to home.
right?
Wow.
And that was, yeah, so like they really, again, they were really smart with like nailing what's happening in the world. I just think, like, similar to Game of Thrones, where everything felt so rushed, plot lines that were set up and
Yeah.
either didn't come together, or I was like, that's the last episode before the finale. I'm like, that's gonna be the last we see of that character, really? Like, that feels
Wild.
very underwhelming. And then,
Yeah.
people rightfully saying, because there's gonna be a spin-off series off of this, and I felt
Mm,
like a lot of the directions they were going in this season that I thought was kind of random, people were going, oh, this is them trying
it's
to.
for the spinoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, I again, I loved when the show, the momentum it had when it first started. It felt fresh. It felt new in a world of superhero movies and stuff like that, and shows. I was
Yep.
like, okay, this is a smart take on it. This is a more realistic take of like what would actually happen. They would basically be Disney Plus, like they would run everything. And it's just like, what if the government was superheroes? And I thought that was interesting. But if
Mhm.
did they land the plane? I don't know. But I'm curious to hear
Interesting.
what people that listen to this show think about it, and if they, because some of my friends have reached out and been like, the finale was at least good, right? And I'm like, well, I mean, it was better than what was this season, but like, I don't know if that's good enough, like, if.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love TV, but I'm ultimately a film lover because films have to have that. Like, even if they don't have an ending, they have to have an ending. They have to have thought through
Yeah.
that ending. It needs to be concise in a way. And I feel like this is like why, at the end of the day, like I almost never watch the series finale episodes
You
of
told
TV
me that
shows I
before,
like.
yeah, because
Yeah, I
it's
I almost never watch them because I'm
yeah.
just sort of like, I'm gonna leave the world open for myself to like rewatch and do all this stuff. And anytime they try to close it, it doesn't feel like they can close it. And I think that's just like sort of the hard part about making more than one season of a show that isn't a hangout show,
Hmm.
right? Like even hangout shows are hard to close, but
I
they
was
have
just gonna
like a
say,
softer closed structure because they don't have stakes necessarily. It's sort of like all we really want are our hangout friends to be happily ever after. So you don't have to like, destroy everything someone was building. You don't have to like make sure somebody pays for something. But when
yeah.
you have these like larger than life television shows that like ultimately are sort of like, on par with movies, but can't do the same thing that movies do because they're in a different medium. I feel like you run into this issue where it's sort of like, how could you'd need a whole season to close it, and that they like won't, they never do that for some reason. I don't know why they don't do that, honestly. I've always wondered, why, like, especially when I was watching that final season of Game of Thrones, I was like, why are we still like moving so slowly when I know there's only like 3 more episodes of this
Yeah.
left? Why are we going so
Well, in
slow in these earlier episodes? What's happening?
House of the Dragon, I think that was one of my complaints of like, they're gearing up towards this battle, and then the final episode, it's like, all right, next season we'll get to the battle, and it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, this is a TV show. Every season needs to have like, and
Some closure of
that
some
to me
sort.
is why TV can be a little bit tough sometimes compared to
Yeah.
movies, because
Yeah.
it can leave you hanging a little bit when you want that closure. And I just, yeah, I mean, and people were so tough on the Stranger Things finale. It's interesting to me that, I feel like people are giving The Boys maybe their nostalgia of how good it used to be, but
Yeah.
and Stranger Things, it's like they're all grown up now, so it's easier to like poke fun at how much time has passed and things like that. But
Totally.
I think maybe Stranger Things did a better job in that final season than The Boys did, wrapping
Okay.
everything up. If I had to pick one, it just there were several moments where I was going, oh yeah, that was a thing. Like now they're having to close this up, but it didn't
Mhm.
feel urgent. I didn't. That's why I would forget it, because I'm like I've been watching this season every week, and
Yeah.
it's just the stakes were always just like random, or the characters didn't feel like it was, like I said, a lot of talking in rooms, and I'm like, this isn't
It's
what.
not it.
And if you have a VFX heavy show, I feel like that's the downfall for a lot of these, what we're talking about, where they have a
Right.
limited budget. It's not a Hollywood movie budget, it's a TV show,
Right.
and they have to account for that. And it just didn't. I don't know if they ever could have accomplished that, honestly, but they certainly tried. So I'll
We'll
give them
see. Yeah, yeah.
I'll give them
Next
props
time
on
I
that.
have to, stay up all night with a small child, I'll see if I can get the boys in my rotation so that I have, that's like pretty much the last time I was able to like actually sit for
Yeah.
hours and hours and
I
watch
mean, it was
something.
still. I think the thing that unanimously, and even I would say, is Anthony Starr as Homelander is
Okay.
like amazing. Like one of the best
Okay.
villains performances we've gotten on TV or movies. I would say he did
Okay.
such a phenomenal job putting so many different psychotic, messed up layers to that guy. That was
That's
it was
awesome.
just so fun to watch and cringe to watch sometimes. And so that one, and I will say, Carl Urban, one of our guys,
Love Carl Urban.
him
Yeah.
as a Butcher was also like another performance that like consistently throughout all the seasons I thought was like really layered, and talking about like semi-ethical, just being like he's almost on the other side of all superheroes need to go, like. So
Yeah.
it was
Okay.
that dichotomy of, I like that Homelander had that one side, Butcher had the other side, and in the middle, our Huey character was kind of in the middle, having to try and fight for humanity, but also he's dating a superhero. So it's like,
Yeah,
so
navigating,
that was
trying to
probably the
navigate
most
those
the
two.
most
Okay.
successful stuff, was just the performances, and even like how gross it was and funny it was. I think they nailed that tone pretty much consistently throughout too. So I mean, I can't complain. Again, like I thought, and the credits, they had like a bunch of, it was like a montage of all the crew working on the show through the years, which I thought was really not
Nice.
nice, to give them props for all the work
Yeah,
they, I
for all
mean,
the hard work.
just even
Totally.
the people that do the gore effects. I mean, this show is nasty at times. Like I don't recommend it to everyone. Like I'm very
Okay. Okay.
selective with like, can you put up with gore, because this
Yeah.
show
Are you going to
is
be able to stand it? Okay.
R-rated Marvel, like. So
I mean, that's at least cool, right?
yeah,
Like, I feel like maybe that's part of it too. Is prestige TV is so incredibly ambitious. It's hard, for the medium itself to keep up with the ambition of some of these showrunners and creators, which is
yeah,
really admirable. But it's just like an interesting challenge that it seems, almost impossible to overcome.
yeah. So you guys have to let us know what you thought of it. And I mean, speaking of TV shows, Taylor Sheridan has been one of the kings of
Cowboy of
television
TV.
for several years, since Yellowstone, which is around the same time that The Boys started, I would say,
Is that
probably.
right?
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And in so many spin-off shows since then. I mean, even if he's not show running it, his name was attached to so many different things. I mean,
And
like,
you can like see it coming a mile away.
yeah.
You're like, oh, that's got to be a Taylor Sheridan show. Got it.
So are
Got it.
you? I mean, I have never seen Yellowstone. I think the one I started watching on the Watches recommendation, our boys, is Landman.
Okay.
And it's interesting. I mean, the first season I thought had potential, and then this last season was like, okay, this just feels like nobody is saying no to Taylor Sheridan. Like, what is happening?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
we're going
Yeah.
off on so many different tangents. Like, they got lost in the plot, basically. And the first season, it was like very simple: Billy
Mhm.
Bob as an oil man and what that entails, and him having to put out fires. I'm like, that's a show. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they have lost that so completely. Like, the cartel's involved now, and there's like
Everybody loves the
people
cartel.
people dying, and like, I'm just, and there's a lot of like family dinners that are just like random. Like the Ali Larter character is like
I'm so glad she's
hilariously
working, but
hilariously written by a guy. Like, it's just so funny. And like,
okay.
just
Okay.
the women in general in that show, it's tough sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, what about
Yeah.
you? Do you watch any of his TV or?
I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. I feel like I'm sort of like a stan against it, just because, like at this point, because I feel like
Yeah.
everyone is so obsessed with it that I'm like, well, you know what? I'm gonna be not into it then if
Yeah.
everyone's so into it. But I do feel like that's why I like that we're doing this movie because I feel like I liked the movie work he was
I
doing
was just gonna say, what
because
about the movie work,
again,
right? I
yeah,
think
it's in the framework where like it has to have a through line. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and end that
yes.
all fits together, that works well, that isn't something that could be up in the air and affected by upfronts or sweeps or any of these things that like affect storytelling on TV. But I will say, I guess I'm like a halfway fan because when he directs, I'm not a huge fan of him directing his own work as I am of like Hell or High Water is my favorite of like his, contributing works because he wrote it, but he's not the director of it. So, it's not uniquely his vision or something. And I'll have to say, like, I don't necessarily love the unique vision that he's bringing forward. I think that's why, like, I'm not interested in the shows because it just feels really on the nose to me. It feels like you're just, like, putting it in my face, and I want more subtlety, and I feel like at least in, like, Wind River, for example, like, there was a
Yeah.
way more subtlety to, the intensity that he's working with. Sicario, right? Intensity, but it's subtle. They're not, like, beating you over the head with it the way that I feel like his TV work has really, like, gotten to a point where it's just, like, basically like R-rated soap operas,
Yeah.
like
And
that.
I mean, it's a smart business model. I mean, this guy like has his ranch where he shoots all these shows.
It's true.
So he's not having to pay those fees or whatever, and he can just pump them out like soap operas forever. Like
It's true.
I just saw there's a new spin-off of Yellowstone coming out now, like another one.
I mean,
Uh
yeah, he's got like the shows that he's doing through Paramount with
yeah,
CBS, but he's also already contracted to go to Peacock as soon as his
after.
contract with with
Yeah.
CBS is up. So,
And
you know,
I'm glad you brought up the movie point because I think that's one where I have like family come up to me and like you haven't seen Yellowstone and this and that, and
same.
my reaction is kind of the same as you of like, well, have you seen Wind River
That's right.
and have you seen Sicario and Hell or High Water? And a lot of the times they haven't, and I'm going, okay, well that's the real, I would say the real stuff I would recommend. And
Yep.
it is interesting, like Wind River, he did direct that one, and I think
Mhm.
that's, but I'm with you. I do think that like the movie format, it's a lot more controlled. It it doesn't have a lot of room for you to get lost in a lot of like just keeping the plot going because you need a whole season. Like
Right. Right.
it's and like you said, the suspense, and he's working with Denis Villeneuve, like one of the best directors working, and Sicario, and like that movie is
Mhm.
amazing. And
Yep.
and this director here, I wasn't as familiar with, but I think there is something about like we talked about with Alex Garland and the 28 franchise of like
Yep.
sometimes I similar to him, I prefer his stuff where he's just a writer and he
Just the
has
writer.
someone else
Mhm.
come in and direct it, which
Same.
I think is why this movie works. I'm excited to talk about it. You
Yeah.
want to get into it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So, if you haven't seen it, it's about two brothers with a plan to rob a series of banks attached to the bank that is foreclosing on their family's land, all while a Texas Ranger working his last case tries to thwart this plan. It's kind of a classic sort of story, but it's also so much smarter.
Yeah.
It's written, of course, by the South poster boy Taylor Sheridan, or the Texas Tyler Perry, as we might call him. It's directed by David Mackenzie. The budget was only 12 million, which like does make sense when you're looking at sort of like how, gritty everything is, but it was able to gross 37.9 million. So a pretty good return on something small that like feels very big even though it was made for very little, and ultimately holds a 3.9 on Letterbox. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think?
Once again, I'm glad we look in the letterbox because like I think they're on the money again. Like
Yeah.
this movie in particular is one that I will bring up, and I have it right here too. I always forget to show the physical copy.
The
This
media.
this one's a cool steelbook one, and so they started doing these cases where like you take them out and it's it got
Yeah.
artwork on there, the shades, and yeah,
I
and a nice steelbook cover on it. So
love it.
yeah, but Yeah, this is always one that, like, someone comes over or something, they're looking for something to watch, and I'll just throw it out there because a lot of I feel like this is such an underrated, like, underseen film that's just, like, very solid. Like, I don't know what you could really hate about it. Like, it's very focused. It's like you said, it's understated. Maybe it's not enough action for, because I do say, like, it's a bank robbing movie, but it's mostly a drama, at the
Yeah.
center of it,
Yes.
with a few like really harrowing like bank robbing scenes,
Right. Right.
that are action packed. But I don't know. I think that's what I like about it, like you said, and the fact that Taylor Sheridan does have a cameo in here. He did write the script, but I think it's just a very like you got these powerhouse performances at the center of
Yeah.
it carrying
Mhm.
you through, and you see both sides. Like you see that even though Jeff Bridges is the stereotypical "this is I'm about to retire in 2 weeks" cop,
Yep. Yep.
they don't focus on that. It's just
No.
like, you can tell he kinda wants this is his area, this is what he's good at.
Yep.
And then on the other side, you have these 2 brothers that in very, masculine trope ways don't talk a lot about how they're feeling. They're just
Right.
there with each other, and they have this task of, "We have to come up with this amount of money to save the family farm,
Right.
and then we're off." So
Yep. Yep.
so I think it's just like, it's not Heat, it's not like,
Right.
like a but I think it's for what it is, like, I really appreciate it. What about you?
Yeah, yeah, I agree, right? I think it like there's some strong writing in here, and I feel like, it's sort of like a modern Western in many ways,
Yes.
like the lawman pursuing the bank robbers, right? Like that, all that is there, and you can feel that grounding. But I do think it's like the performances really take it over the top.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like, my one thing about a movie like this is that like occasionally there is some, like it's going to be a quiet scene where Jeff Bridges is going to talk for like 5 minutes straight, and he needs to hold me because the filmmaking can't really do anything else. Like it's meant to be focused on the performance. Same with Chris Pine. Like there's some really good moments where it's just sort of like, this is about how these people feel, and I'm not going to telegraph it for you. You're going to see it come through their performance. And I think that's what always sticks with me about it. And plus, it's also just like clever. It subverts lots of your expectations. Like, it isn't the standard bank robbery movie, even though it still has some of those tropes. Ben Foster, of course, being the hothead who's going to like destroy the
Yes.
plan
Yep.
inadvertently because they can't like control themselves. That's, of course, here. But like, this is also ultimately like, spoiler alert, like they win in the end, and it's like
Mhm.
you kind of do want to see that every once in a
Yep.
while, and you want to see why that's maybe the right choice for a story like this. And there is like a deeper, political, sociocultural storyline that they're kind of also working with, that I feel like, we don't necessarily touch on in other bank robbery movies because we're a little too into the action. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate, I think, the balance of a really grounded storytelling with some elevation, but like grounded reality, because like, this is what it would be like if you robbed small banks, right? Not
Yeah.
if you're like in downtown LA robbing a bank, but if it's a bank with like some old lady that works there, like her and one other guy, that's all that's going to be there. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's so interesting because you're like, yeah, this feels like really grounded.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I like his film work and the stories he has put forward on film versus like the very heightened fantastical realities that he is constructing on TV.
Yeah, and like you said, everything is so understated, which like is so refreshing to see where, AI is taking over and these algorithms of like you have to restate the plot and the characters' intentions every 5 minutes. It's like to see where they barely talk about their mom
Nauseating.
that died, it's like very offhand or like
Yeah.
you get the from the first scene where they're robbing the bank, these characters immediately. Like I like how the first robbery they yeah, you said they're robbing the old lady, and she's like, "Is this your first time?" Like, because she didn't have the code, she didn't have the code to the safe,
Yep.
and they had to wait for the manager to come in, and then so it is their first time. We know they're like kind of amateurs,
Yep.
and then like you said, the Ben Foster character, he's the hothead because she says something as mundane as like, "You're stupid" or something like that. Like, "What are you, stupid?" And he's like, just completely, you see the rage in his eyes of like, this, you're not going to call me stupid. I have the gun, get on the floor, like
That's right.
trying to
That's
take
right. I'll have to put
control.
yeah, more fear into you
Yeah.
because I think that's it too. Is it like they're also pointing out to you that like the people in these towns, like they're it's about their town, right?
Yeah.
It's not about it's unique in the sense that like basically like I believed that like because I love that opening scene. And she says something like, the manager's not here and you should be gone before he comes here because right now you're only guilty of being stupid.
Stupid. Yeah.
So that's what she says, which I'm like, so clever, so like such a real sounding line from someone
I
who
love
like is in the
all the
South.
side characters in here are amazing. I
They feel
love them.
so good.
Yeah.
Yes. But it is one of those things where it's like, I honestly believe that if they did leave, she wouldn't have told anybody they came. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like she wouldn't have
Well,
ratted them out. She wouldn't have called the police. She would have just been like, yep, that's some bullshit that we face in these towns. Nobody cares about us. No one cares. Like nobody got hurt. So it's fine.
well,
Right. Like
yeah. I was gonna
that
say,
reality feels authentic.
and yeah, like, a lot of these people have pride, like you said, and we know that's true of these people knowing not to talk. When I love the scene with the waitress, where we're
Yes.
sitting in the restaurant, she's kind of flirting with Chris Pine, which like
Best.
checks out. Played by Katie Mixon Greer from Eastbound and Down. All the
The
East, yeah,
best.
and she's
Yes.
so good in that part. And he tips her $200, and
Mhm.
they're trying to collect that money for evidence, and you see how mad she gets of like, this is, I earned this, like this is mine. And because of that, she doesn't cooperate with the police or give them a description of what those guys look like. And
That's
so
right.
I think you're right on the money there, that like these people are proud. And I watched some of the special features. I thought there was one interesting part of like how they came to the look of the film, which I think, this is a 4K of it. I think it looks incredible
Yeah,
on
yeah. The
4K.
texture,
Um,
of all these places is so good.
and they said, I mean, David Mackenzie, I'm not really familiar with his work, but he's from England.
Yeah, he's
And
British.
I think Ben Foster, I think, is the one that said, or maybe it was Taylor Sheridan, that like, that having that outside perspective, on, I think it was Taylor Sheridan, because he's like, I drive by these places all the time, and so they don't have necessarily like a feel of being like something that would be captured on camera in this way. And so
Right,
for him, and I think his cinematographer is also like, not from America, that
right.
they could look at it in a way that maybe they've only seen in like westerns and things like that. And I think they do such a great job of that.
Totally,
It's
totally.
the production designer too is talking about like how even in the interiors, he wanted it all to be earthy browns.
Yes.
And because this is
Yeah, a
a
little
film
dirty.
about land,
That's
that's
right.
what this film is about. So you're getting yellows and browns for pretty much the entire film.
So
But
good.
it works. It
It
works. You know what
worked.
I mean? It puts you into
Yeah.
this place.
Yeah, and I sort of love the score of this too because it's like borderline eerie, sort of like showing you how like these are sort of haunted places. Like these are ghost towns where people still live, but they're forgotten, It's as if they don't
Hmm.
exist. And they've been oppressed by all kinds of systems, which is why they don't really care to cooperate or support these systems that have come in and totally exploited them. Right? Like
Yeah.
whether that's law enforcement or the banking industry or like, those systems that like low key don't give a shit about people like them and they know that.
That's why I really like the again, the supporting characters. It's easy to just look at the three main name actors in here, but Jeff Bridges' partner, Gil Birmingham is the actor's
Yes.
name. I
Yep.
think he's like so representative of that, where they have that, when they're waiting out to see if they're gonna rob this bank, they're kind of staking out this bank for like a whole, section of the movie. And he talks about that like, this was our land, this was my people's land for
Yeah,
so many
before
years.
these grandparents of these people stole it, right?
And then after that, the banks and the corporations came in and stole it.
Stole
And
it.
so
Mhm.
basically talking about the evolution of America and why people are, and I think like that's held up even more, like we talk about with
Even more.
how nowadays it's gotten so bad, inflation and people having to
Well, and
really.
developers, like
Mhm.
going buying people out of their land,
Yep.
like I guess that's like the thing about Landman too, right? Like it's a little bit more in depth about how people sort of like buy the mineral rights to people's land so that they can sort of say that we don't have to own your property to own anything lucrative that's on it.
That's on it.
We can
Yeah.
even buy that now. And I do feel like that it's important to talk about that in this movie because like that's what makes this movie hold up longer. Is it has the grounding of like a real cultural situation that these people face. It isn't just preoccupied with like the howling that Ben Foster does when they get away with it. Like I like
Yeah.
all that stuff. I want all that stuff, of course, but like everybody here sort of understands that there's something underneath it and I think that sets it apart from like your typical heist movie.
Yeah, it's almost like you're getting kind of a buddy cop thing at a certain point,
You
like,
do get
because
that.
they go
Mhm.
on the road and they're trying to capture these guys and just all their scenes together. I liked when, that part I'm talking about where they're staking out and they go to, like, the one restaurant in that town, and
The best.
that waitress there is, like, so sassy, this sassy old lady, and she's just like, "What are you not gonna have?" You know? And they're like,
Yep.
"Excuse me?" She's like, "There's T-bones and mashed potatoes, and you're either not gonna have the corn, or you're not gonna have the green beans, like, that's it."
And then she's like, "They're gonna be medium rare," and he goes
Yeah.
to, like, ask her to change that, and she's like, "That's not a question," right? Like, that wasn't a question. But exactly,
It's
right? Like,
just
real people,
yeah.
local hires, and I feel like I guess that's what I kind of miss about, when there were like, in the '90s and things like that, when there were expansions and, like, tax breaks that allowed people to film in different parts of the country, is they could bring more authenticity about where they were in the supporting cast, right? They could do
Mm,
local hires no matter where they're filming, so that just gives it more grounding, makes it feel more realistic. And I think,
yeah.
like, that's maybe why people latch on to what Taylor Sheridan's doing now because, like, he is doing it in a grounded way because he's in the local space, right? Like,
Yep.
he's not doing he's not doing 911, like, Lone Star from Beverly Hills the way that they were doing it for Fox a while ago. He's, like, really doing it in this place, bringing in real people that sort of, like, resemble this place. And it's true, that lady, I'm always looking forward to that scene because 'cause I'm like, "God, this woman was amazing."
Nailed it. And there's like a scene after that where she's walking to her car, you just see her through the window when they're talking. And I'm just like, I
Yes.
love that. Like there's so much happening like
The
at all times.
background
Like you
work.
said, the texture is like so there. Two other things they say that added to that realism and to that groundedness, like you're saying on the special features. One was they did not want anything to feel like it was a set, so they didn't use sets. Like
Good.
they actually went to these towns
Yep.
and if it wasn't a bank, like I think, some of them were actual banks, and then some were banks that were shutting down that they just revamped to look
Which
like
I'm
new
sure
banks.
were available, right?
Yeah. And so that was one thing that I'm like, yeah, you can tell. Like I couldn't, I look out for that, just because we watch so much stuff and like I couldn't really pin anything
Yeah.
that seemed artificial to me. And the other thing that the director was talking about, which I was gonna comment on anyway, but I'm glad he went into detail about it, is the action scenes. There's barely any cutting.
Yes.
When there's action, he said, like, and there's a stylistic action that, of course, we're fans of that, I'll take too, but the style of this movie, the tone that they were going for, he said the violence in this movie is rough, it's unpredictable, it's messy, and so you're not gonna cut and around it to make the audience feel that we're in a movie. We're gonna keep it on the people that are, in a fight. And the two examples I thought of that I was going to mention is the first bank robbing scene
Yep.
when it's on the door waiting for the manager to come in, and then one of them hits the guy in the face with the gun. I think it's Chris Pine.
Yeah.
And then the other one was when they're at a gas station and those guys pull up in like the green,
Mhm.
muscle car and starts shit talking Ben Foster. I'm like, guys, you don't know,
Yeah,
I'm
what this
waiting for
guy
Ben
just did.
Foster every time, waiting for Ben Foster to like blow up. And
Yep.
who comes in? It's Chris Pine, who's like, you're not going to talk shit about my brother and get away with it, and just completely like,
Yes. Well,
hits
it's
this
like he
guy
keeps
and
it so together in those
yeah.
situations that when they're outside of them, more explodes. Because I feel like that's how I feel about the scene when they're at the casino, when Chris
Mm,
Pine's talking to the pro, and Ben Foster just comes in, like, so hardcore and, like, grabs her and is like, "What do you think he, like, gives her so much shit, and she's like, "You're crazy, mister." Like, it's
yeah.
an
I
amazing,
love that
amazing
scene.
scene.
I love that scene so much. Like I think again, talking about the layers there, it's like you do feel like what she's saying is actually like what Chris Pine is feeling, that he's
Yes.
lonely, that he needs like some sort of love that's not just his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Ben Foster comes on, he's actually kind of right too, that she probably saw all of his chips and was like, I'm gonna make some money off this guy. And so I think that's the best you can do in movies and TV, is when both sides are right.
Yes.
And there's not like a good guy and a bad guy, and like, yeah, and then he blows up, and again, they don't say how much they love each other, but clearly they both are willing to die and fight for each other at a pin drop, like at a moment's notice.
Yes.
They're ready to take it there, you know?
And I do love in the end when there is this realization that, we have completed our goal, but there's no real way for both of us to come out on the other side of this, because what it took to complete their goal, was a little bit against the original plan. And how Ben Foster does say, I love you, I mean it, right? Like, love you,
Hmm.
mean it. And it's just sort of like, that's as
Yeah.
much as he could say. And then he's like, and also go fuck yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
he has to just very quickly kind of turn it
Have
around
to
again.
undercut it. Have to undercut it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I like that, because it's sort of like, that's exactly right. Like they've been showing love to one another in the only way they know how across this experience. And we're still going to get a little bit of that closure, and we're still going to get sort of like that sacrificial for family, element that I think is both like, helpful and hurtful to people who are in strife. But they also kind of comment on sort of like, being poor is a sort of sickness, and it makes people into things that they wouldn't normally be. And I like really appreciate sort of how that all plays out between the two of them. But I also sort of love how Jeff Bridges knows this too. Right. He's not like
Hmm.
them because he chose like a career in the law. He chose to sort of stop men like this. But I feel like they're always sort of leaning into the sense of like, but he is one of these men. He just,
Yeah.
chose a different job, right? Like
Yep.
he has the shield of the badge or whatever, but like he knows these guys. He knows where they're, what their plans may be gonna go for. He knows kind of where it's all gonna end up, and he knows what to do to take him out ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's dealing with those tropes, but like again, the performance is elevated because just like Al Pacino and this guy knows how they think or whatever, and so people are calling him old and senile and crazy, and he's going, no, these guys aren't tweakers, like
Nope.
they
Yeah, he knows.
tweakers are
Mhm.
not up this early, and there was some planning around this. They only
Yeah,
took
this is smart.
these amounts of bills. They didn't take hundreds. They didn't take the packs. And so like, yeah, Jeff Bridges kind of doing his True Grit thing. I think this is an amazing like
Nailing
performance
it.
too, where you can barely understand him half the time, but like it's so good, and like
It's so
feels like
good.
he's from this place.
Well, and another fun piece of trivia is he's the only actor to have filmed in these places more than once, because when he made The Last Picture Show, back in the day, it was in these small towns. He filmed in
That's
these small
crazy.
towns. So yeah, he
Yeah.
he also, it's like a full circle like kind of moment for him, like very early career. He's in these spaces, and these towns look different and they represent something completely different. And as he is sort of aging out of his career and playing this like person who's kind of like a ghost but still around, the towns also mirror that. I just kind of love that like life and art thing coming together
Yeah.
there.
And
Um,
like you said, he is like one of them, like to the sacrificial element, like, Ben Foster's like, he's not coming back. Like, he's not going to make it,
mhm.
for his brother. When, Jeff Bridges' partner dies, that same thing goes off where he's like, you killed my partner. Like now
Yeah, I can't stop. I have to kill you.
yeah, that's
Yep.
and he does. Like even when the guy's like, "Are you sure you want me to take the shot?" It's you're pretty winded. It's my gun. He's like, "Give me that." Like
That's right. I got you. And
I got to take the shot because
that's
I
right.
was the one that suffered a loss of this
Yeah.
guy, and that death always hits me like really. It's so sudden. Like we talked about
Yes.
the violence and everything. Like you barely see it. You just see him on the ground. His brains are in the hat. It's like very visceral.
Yeah, just a pop.
Yeah, And so like that one just always, and you're, again, this is a buddy cop kind of thing going on, and so you start to feel for these cops too at the same time. Like they're not assholes, they're just doing their jobs. And
Right.
so and that, again, that I think that speaks to his partner's performance too, where he's half Mexican, half Indian, and so Jeff Bridges is putting these Indian jokes at him the whole movie, and he's like,
Right.
I'm half Mexican too, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
I know, but once I'm done with the Indian jokes, then I'll get to the Mexican jokes.
That's right. I'll start those.
And you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of tell too, he's like tired of it at this point. Like, just retire, man. Like, I'm tired of these fucking jokes, like,
Yep.
but there's still a love there. There's still a
Yes.
love and a comfort and safety they have with each other. Like, and again, it's layered. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that it's subversive in that way too, because they're setting up the whole common archetype of like, this is your last case, you're gonna go down shooting because like, leaving this is like dying anyway. He even like sort of says that essentially.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's sort of like, no, the person we didn't expect to die is the one who loses their life in this. And it
Hmm.
is, I think that's what's so great too about the closure scene when they kind of come together and he's like, how did you guys actually do it?
Hmm.
Like he just kind of he wants that closure too. And even Chris Pine is like, maybe I can give you that closure. And you're sort of like, what would that be? What are you talking about? What do you mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
nope, we both have to kind of accept that like the chips fell the way they did. And that's all there is to it, right? Like there is no perfect ending in real life, just like there's not, there is a successful end to sort of the result, but there's no perfect, nobody walks away unscathed.
Yeah, I love the ending too. I'm so glad there wasn't a sequel like Sicario 2, which I thought was like really bad, pretty much. Like it
Yeah.
was just not. It already was not going to be as good as the first one, but like they didn't even come close. Like it was
No.
just, yeah,
How
it
could
was
it be? How could
really
it be?
really disappointing. And I'm pretty sure Taylor Sheridan wrote that sequel too. So, but I
Ah,
love how
great.
this one ends, where it's like they could do a sequel, but it's so much stronger that there isn't. That you, like you said, there's no closure. Even we haven't talked about Chris Pine yet as much, but like his character arc in this movie too, I think is really strong.
Yep.
Where he's like happy at the end. He lost his brother.
Right.
He's put the farm in a trust for his sons or whatever, but like him and his ex aren't doesn't
They're
seem like
not
they're getting
together.
back together.
Nope.
You know what I mean? So he's by himself, just like Jeff Bridges. He's alone in this
Yep.
world trying to figure out what he's gonna do next. And I really like that choice. And I wanted to just shout out to his the person who plays his ex, Marin Ireland. Like she just had a really cool turn in the Bear like spin-off episode they just had.
Okay.
It was like an hour special or something that just came
Yeah.
out. That might be like my scene of the year. It was her and John Bernthal, like,
Nice.
and they had this scene, and I mean, it's very close to what we're talking about, of like how difficult it is for men to, talk about their feelings and things like that. And John Bernthal just killed that scene with her,
Of
where it's like
course.
this woman he just met at this bar, and that's where he feels comfortable being vulnerable, in that scene. It was just like amazing. Like, so I thought, just wanted to shout her out, that she's still working today, and
Getting it
very
done.
regularly, and she doesn't have a lot to do in this movie. But Chris Pine, he tried being a leading man for a long time in these types of parts, and I think this one puts him to good use, I'll say. You know what I mean? Like this
Yes.
one,
Yeah.
it's not like unbelievable. Of course, he has like the good looks, like maybe
He is the
these
best looking dirty cowboy
cowboy
ever,
there
right?
is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, maybe that could be like a tough thing for people to get over. But I believe it. I think he's doing good, like understated work here. And you believe it even when the action scenes. Like I love the scene where he gets shot, and again, it's so messy and so rushed, you don't even really see where he got shot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
They're
You don't
not.
realize it till later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what did you think of him in this movie as
I
well?
thought he was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a capital A actor in my opinion. He always tries to like bring that authenticity, and I think he did succeed. And I agree. I feel like he tries to be a different kind of leading man, but when he's the quiet leading man, I actually prefer him the most. I think
I think
I
so
love
too.
the scene at the end when he's at the casino and they don't like rub in your face that the news is covering his brother's death. They just like let you see his performance to let us know how he feels about hearing how everything ended up with his brother, right? Like he went off to change the money, and now he knows what happened to his brother.
Kind of at that same place in the bar too, which I thought was like a nice like full circle thing too, like where he was talking to that pro before, you know what I mean? And it was like, well, now I don't, even though my brother was being an ass, now I don't even have that, you know, like
Yes,
it's,
yes.
but yeah. And then there was some action scenes we hadn't talked about yet. I just wanted to mention, like, I like when Chris Pine is sitting at the restaurant and you just see Ben Foster through the window, you know, when he
Yes.
decides to just go solo and do a bank they hadn't agreed on. And
Yes.
then Ben Foster at the end, you know, doing the old Jeremy Renner in the town, one man versus a whole army. And even when the last bank robbery they do, when there's so many people in that bank, and it's like so disorienting,
Yep.
and you get the security guard there, you get somebody who just has a gun in the bank. It's just Texas, you know.
Yeah,
Most, you
yeah.
have to assume
The
most people
locals
are
that show
carrying
up outside.
the
Mhm.
locals that chase him, and then he uses that like automatic rifle to just like completely turn them around, like you're messing with the wrong guy.
Yeah, like, you don't need to yeah, this isn't your fight, get out of here. Mhm.
So I just wanted to shout those out. This movie did get nominated for 4 Academy Awards, which I'm
That's
always
right.
surprised by. I always forget. Nominated for Best Picture, Jeff Bridges for Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Screenplay for Taylor Sheridan,
Yep.
and a Best Achievement in Film Editing. Didn't win any of those, but I thought that was like worth mentioning.
It's true. Yeah,
Uh,
it
the f-
ta
yeah.
this one's like the Western that had to be in there, you know?
Exactly. And Jeff Bridges too. They love Jeff Bridges at the Oscars. So we all love Jeff Bridges. Um, the film is dedicated to David John Mackenzie and Ursula Sybil Mackenzie, who are the parents of the director, David Mackenzie.
Yeah.
They both died while he was making his film, so I thought
It
that was a nice
sucked.
tribute.
Yeah.
Due to his tight schedule with Star Trek Beyond, which we didn't talk about, Chris Pine playing Captain Kirk, you
That's
know,
right.
that's his other big role, which I think he's good in.
Mhm.
He was only available for 2.5 weeks. So all of his scenes had to be shot very rapidly and in sequence to maintain that required level and energy, and probably like his look too. He gets really like, you
Yeah.
know, dirty
It's,
and
like,
gruffy
grimier
towards
as it
the
goes
end.
on. Mhm.
Um, I love the scene with Toby, Chris Pine, and his son. He offers him a beer, which is like Texas is one of
Yes.
those states like Wisconsin where if an adult offers a minor a beer, they can drink, they
I
can do
didn't
it.
know that that was also a Wisconsin rule. I did know
I'm
that
pretty
about
sure.
Texas, but holy smokes, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
And I just, yeah, again, I love that scene where he refuses it. You know, he's like, you don't want me to be like you, but you offered me a beer. And I was like, that was a little test. I feel like Chris Pine was giving his
Mhm.
son, and again, a lot of understated acting going on in that scene.
Yeah, and I love how his son when he's like, "You're gonna hear a lot of things about me," and his son's like, "Oh, I won't believe them," and he's like, "No, do
I
believe
want
them.
you to believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
believe
Like,
them
do
and be
not
different
be
than me."
like me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Exactly. Um, let's see. This was, a lot of it was shot in New Mexico, and it's doubling for Texas, but I still appreciate that they use actual location. You know what I
Right,
mean? At the end of the
right,
day.
yeah, over everything.
Did I have any other ones? Oh, I like this one that Taylor Sheridan was inspired by the TV miniseries Lonesome Dove, which
Oh,
is, most people say, the best TV miniseries of all time,
okay.
based on Larry McMurtry's novel. So there you go. It's
Nice.
a western. It's a
Okay,
western, so
okay.
it makes sense. I thought I had like one more in here, but I'm like not. It was like a longer one. I'm not gonna find it.
I mean, there is a lot in here for it being, you know, a small movie, quick movie. There I feel like every time I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, that's another great, like, just little edge, you know, to put on it. But I do feel like the showing, the not telling of this movie is what always makes me return to it, and why I do recommend it to people, because I am sort of like, this isn't your typical heist movie. Like this one gets you thinking. This one kind of leaves you feeling something. And, you know, of course, you're left feeling something, yeah, at the end of Heat and Point Break and stuff, but, like, not in the same way, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I found it. Basically, we already kind of touched on this, but before any characters introduced, there's a piece of graffiti on the wall,
Yes,
at the bank that says 3 tours in Iraq, no bailout for people like us.
that's right.
So, making reference to the bailouts the U.S. government is giving to the banking industry,
Mhm.
and you know the film is about in American families taking that bill, footing that bill,
Yeah.
and paying the price for that. So I think that was like another subtle thing that they had here. So I guess final thoughts. Yeah, like I said, I think this is like a really under, even though it was like nominated for Best Picture and things like that. It's just kind of hasn't had the staying power I've noticed as other Taylor Sheridan works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I'm always like, Taylor Sheridan, you should check this out,
That's right. That's
because
right.
it's Jeff Bridges. People are like, oh yeah, of course, he's great. Chris Pine, Ben Foster always brings it. Like
Always.
his level of intensity. It kind of reminds me of a John Bernthal. Actually, I was as I was thinking of that scene in The Bear, I'm like, yeah, Ben Foster kind of was John Bernthal before John Bernthal.
I like to
Like
think of Ben Foster as the blonde Shia LaBeouf. He
okay,
like
yeah,
if
similar.
he took all of Shia's, roles, we wouldn't have to deal with his controversial nonsense. And they bring that same kind of like wild card,
Yes,
unpredictable quality to the characters they play.
which you
Um,
need in a bank robbing movie because we've seen a lot of
yes.
bank robbing movies. What are you going to do different? And the
Yep.
wild card is usually that piece. Like
Exactly.
in the casino playing poker, we didn't mention that scene either, but I love that interaction with the Native American guy. He's like, what Comanche means? Like that was another
It's all
sick
good.
scene.
Yeah, it's like things aren't wasted in the writing. Things aren't wasted in the direction. And those are the movies that I always, like the most. I don't like things that are in there just to be in there, and I think that again is why ultimately I always return to movies, not as much to TV.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. We both recommend it. And I think that about wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
Get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
So you never miss a rep. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
We'll be back next time covering Shrek. Should be fun.
Yep.
Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then.
So what don't you want?
Pardon?
What don't you want?
Oh, well, I think I just,
I've been working here for 44 years. Ain't nobody ever ordered nothing but T-bone steak and a baked potato. Except this one asshole from New York tried to order trout back in 1987. We don't sell no goddamn trout. T-bone steaks. So either you don't want the corn on the cob, or you don't want the green beans. So what don't you want?
I don't want green beans.
I don't want green beans either.
Steaks cooked medium rare.
Can I get my steak cooked just
That
a...
want no question.
All right.